Welcome back to Train Signal's Citrix XenApp training. You're watching Securing XenApp lesson. Alright, so we've talked a lot about the environment, we've talked about servers and printers and publishing stuff. Well, now is the time where we talk about, well, how do I give users that are trying to connect from outside of my network access to my internal resources securely? And how do I configure some sort of encryption if I wanted to deploy encryption on my LAN between my endpoints and my servers? And what are the different options that I have? So in this lesson, what we're going to focus on are the different methods by which you can secure the communications or the connections to XenApp servers. We're also going to talk about how you can integrate secure or access gateway, for that matter, with the web interface, and what's the difference between the secure and the access gateway. So for starters, let's start by talking about the different methods by which you can secure connectivity to XenApp. So let's talk a little bit about Secure ICA. Secure ICA is an encryption method by which you can encrypt the communication between a device that's on the LAN and a XenApp server. Now, even Citrix, to be honest with you, doesn't really recommend the use of Secure ICA. Secure ICA doesn't really leverage any type of certificate, so it's decent, it's good, but it's not very used. In my 14 or 15 years of deploying XenApp, I maybe have seen Secure ICA deployed once, and the basic format, when we get in, I'll show you where you can configure it and everything, but it's something that you need to know for the CCA exam, which is why I have it listed here. So what I'm going to do in this lesson is sort of break down what we're going to cover for the CCA exam and then what you're actually going to use in real life. So with regards to this CCA exam, the Secure ICA, you need to know and understand that there exists a method by which you can encrypt communication between the client and the server, and we'll go through and I'll show you where to enable that and the different encryption levels that you can assign to it. There's also an SSL relay. Now, typically, if you're trying to allow users to connect from outside the network, you want to be able to secure those connections with the highest level of security possible. And to do that, you want to use some form of access gateway or secure gateway, for that matter. Now, the difference between the secure gateway and the access gateway is the access gateway is an appliance that you can deploy either as a physical or a virtual appliance in your DMZ, which sort of proxies or bridges the connection between the outside world and the inside world. It'll take the connection from the outside world, terminate it on the appliance, and then reconstruct it and reinitiate it from the appliance into the inside world, which is the most security you can do. Now, the access gateway comes at a price. You have to pay for it, of course, which is why Citrix provides the software version of the access gateway, which is known as the secure gateway. It gets installed on top of Microsoft Windows, and then you can deploy the Windows operating system in the DMZ. Now, obviously, you'd have to harden it and make sure it's locked down properly. Now, the one thing to note about Secure Gateway is that Citrix will not update it. It's right now at version 3.2. I believe it's been sitting at version 3 for over 3 years. So there's no new development that's going into Secure Gateway. It's sort of like if you've run out of budget and you really need to, you deploy the Secure Gateway. But ideally, what you want for your environment is to deploy the Access Gateway. It's hardened. It's got the latest and greatest from a security standpoint. It's not a Windows server that you're deploying in the DMZ. So it has a lot of benefits. So what we're going to cover in this lesson is we're going to take a look at Secure ICA, we're going to take a look at SSL Relay, we're going to take a look at Secure Gateway, and then I'm going to leave the Access Gateway portion for the lesson after this, which deals with the NetScaler Access Gateway Enterprise Edition. Now, if you can deploy an Access Gateway, the second choice is deploy the Secure Gateway. Secure Gateway is the best thing that you have if you can't afford or if there's no budget for the Access Gateway. Now, there exists a method by which you can allow users to connect from the outside, connect to Citrix XenApp servers without a secure gateway, and that's known as the SSL relay. Now, the SSL relay is if you don't have a budget, you don't have money to buy the access gateway, for whatever reason you can't deploy the secure gateway. I'd be surprised, but you can't deploy the secure gateway. Then your very, very last choice would be to deploy an SSL relay, which leverages certificates in order to allow connectivity between the outside world and the inside world. Again, Secure ICA and SSL Relay, I've have them here. I'm going to show you how to configure them and connect them. I only recommend you know them for the CCA exam. In reality, in real life, when you go into your job, you're not going to use these two in particular. You'll use either the Secure Gateway or the Access Gateway. Now, that being said, let's take a look at how the SSL Relay works. Obviously, you have the external network here, the internet, trying to connect onto your secure network. It's going to traverse the firewall, and it's going to secure this connection using certificates. Again, very, very basic here, but I just wanted to give you a graphical illustration of what this entails. Now, the Secure Gateway can be deployed in your environment in any number of different ways, right? So right now we're going to show this diagram illustrates the Secure Gateway and the web interface in the DMZ. So users that are connecting from the outside are going to traverse the firewall. They're going to hit the Secure Gateway, and the Secure Gateway will proxy the connection and secure the connection to the web interface and allow you access to the inside resources. These are the ports that you would need to have open between the DMZ and the inside network. You have 80.443, 1494, which is ICAP, and 2598, which is session reliability, whereas here all you need is 443. So you see in this deployment, the connection that's coming in from the client will terminate at the Secure Gateway, and the Secure Gateway will reconstruct it and then pass it on to the XenApp server, and it will continuously proxy the connection between the client and the XenApp server. So at no point will the client be able to directly connect to the XenApp server. They're always going through 443 and connecting through the Secure Gateway. Now, the other option would be to have a double hop DMZ, which means the user is connecting first to the Secure Gateway. The Secure Gateway will then hop into another DMZ, go through another firewall, and talk to the Secure Gateway proxy in there, which will then communicate with web interface and enumerate the resources and back and forth. So eventually, when the connection is established, it's going to go something like this. So the connection is always going to be proxied through the Secure Gateway. This is the highest level of security you can get. In some instances, some people will take the web interface and even put it on the inside network so that you're basically doing a double hop DMZ in this case. And you'll see that the ports here are the same. Between the DMZs, you're only connecting over 443, and from the outside, you're coming in over 443 as well. All right, let's go ahead and switch to our demo portion now and go through some demonstrations. Let's first start by talking about Secure ICA. So if you wanted to secure or encrypt connections between the clients and resources on the servers, you would have to do it on a per application or a per published desktop level. So let's say you wanted to encrypt the communication between users and the community desktop. So what we're going to do is right click on it, and we're going to drag down to application properties here, and then we are going to go into client options, and you see the first thing you want to do is first of all enable SSL and TLS protocols. As soon as you enable it, then you can select from the drop-down menu here the level of encryption that you want to apply between the device and the server itself. Now, basic encryption is not really basic. It's if someone sniffs the network and they see the encryption that's going on with basic, if they know what they're looking for, they can very easily get around the basic encryption. So it's not really encrypting anything, it's sort of masquerading what the user is able to see. So it's not real encryption per se. Now, the other levels of encryption here you can take a look at, and there's really no performance degradation. You don't take any performance hit if you enable any type of encryption between the client, for example, and the resource that it's trying to launch. However, in order for this to communicate or connect at 128-bit, for example, you want to make sure that the client is also configured, the ICA client is also configured to connect at 128. I'm going to leave this at basic, but the other thing that I wanted to mention here is that be careful, because if you're enforcing group policies or Citrix policies or anything like that, they will tend to overwrite the settings that you have configured here. So it's just one thing that I wanted to mention, but this is where you can come and enable Secure ICA either for your published applications or your published desktops. Purposes of this demonstration, we're just going to keep this disabled at this point. Now let's focus a little bit and talk about SSL Relay. Now, in order for you to work with SSL Relay, you need to have a certificate installed on the XenApp server. Now, for the purposes of my demonstration, I've already installed a self-signed certificate, and for those of you that are following along, I just want to make sure you don't miss a step or you don't get stuck here. So I'm going to show you exactly what I've done. So once you install the IIS Management Console through the role, it'll give you access to the IIS Information Services Manager here, IIS. Make sure you don't go into 6.0. You want the 7.5 or whatever comes with Windows Server 2008. Once you have that over here, you're going to click on your server, which in my case is XA01. We're going to drill down and come down to Server Certificates. Once you're in there, you'll notice I've already signed my certificate, but you can very easily click on Create Signed Certificate, go through the process, and it'll install one on this particular server for you. Now, of course, if you're in a production environment, you don't want to self-sign the certificate. You probably want to get a certificate from like a VeriSign or some kind of a certificate authority that's trusted, etc. And you can deal with certification or certificate issues here in order to create the certificate request, etc. Now, once you have your certificate installed, what you want to do is click on All Programs, Citrix, Administration Tools, and you're going to click on Citrix SSL Relay Configuration Tool here. Now, the first thing you'll notice is, well, it's basically saying that, look, this hasn't been configured, it's going to apply default values, etc., etc. We're going to accept this informational window. And voila, this is the certificate that I have signed. It automatically detected it and loaded up into the SSL relay here. So what I'm going to do is enable it. And then if you go down here to connection, this is where you are now securing the connection between XenApp or XA01 and another server. So right now I have it between XA01 and 192.168.1.51, which is this particular server. If you wanted to secure the connection with a different type of server, maybe you can click on New here, and let's say you wanted to secure it with XA02 or between XA02. Set whatever ports you want to set for the configuration, click on OK, and voila, you've just added that. So it's very, very simple here, and you can select whether it's SSL version 3 or TLS version 1. So you can modify it to your liking. And then of course you want to add you want to configure the proper cipher families here. The only two suites that you have access to with SSL Relay is Gov and Com. So you can see it's a little limiting in terms of what you can do. It's not really, honestly, it's not really meant to be used, but I just wanted to show you where it is. I wanted to make sure you knew which cipher suites you have access to, just in case this happens to be one of the exam questions on the CCA exam. So once you have that configured, you can click OK, and voila, the SSL Relay begins to work. But what we want to do is really show you how you can use the secure gateway in order to configure or secure connections between the outside world and your internal resources. Now, to do that, you want to install the secure gateway on a Windows box, and the secure gateway is available off of the XenApp 6 CD. So if we click here and go in, let's go ahead and auto run our CD here. You want to go into manual install of components, and then it's under common components. And voila, secure gateway. Now the secure gateway wizard is very traditional. It's almost like the old application install, nothing very, very fancy here, very basic installation. And it gives you the option of, do you want to do secure gateway or secure gateway proxy? We're going to select the secure gateway. The secure gateway proxy is very limited in terms of options, so the secure gateway will walk us through everything, whereas the proxy is very, very simple. So once we go through all of these settings, this becomes just a walk in the park. So going through secure gateway here, default location, we're not going to change any of that. We're going to select an account that the secure gateway can run under, which will provide credentials and determine privileges. So it's usually ideal to select the network service. This is more than enough usually for this, and it's pretty secure. So I usually go with a network service to provide these, and that's it. And once you're done, you click on next, finish, and you just go through the entire installation. It's very, very easy, very, very straightforward from a configuration standpoint. Once it's completed, we're going to click on finish, and it's basically saying, look, it hasn't been configured. Click OK to launch the configuration tool. So we're going to click on OK again, and hey, do you want to do standard or advanced for the purpose of this demonstration? Let's go with the advanced configuration here. it's asking you to select a secure server certificate. Now remember, we've already created a certificate, and hopefully by now so have you. So you can select that, you can view it if you need to. Click on next. This step of the wizard basically allows you to secure the protocol settings. We want to use SSL, so we've selected SSL version 3. These are the security suites that you have access to. We're just going to select them all. Click on next to go through with this. What it's basically asking you on this step of the wizard is, do you want to monitor all incoming connections to the server over port 443, or do you want to monitor only specific incoming connections? So if I uncheck this, now you can click on add, and if you had multiple IP addresses or multiple NICs installed into the server, and you only wanted the secure gateway to listen in on a particular interface because that's the interface that's waiting for connections from the outside world, you have the ability of selecting which interface here you want to listen on and which port it's listening on. So if this is what you're listening on for incoming connections, that this is what it would be. For the purposes of our demonstration, we're just going to monitor all of the incoming connections over all of the interfaces. We're going to keep that at default and click on next. Now this step is where you configure the proxies. Typically, if there was a proxy configured, how do you want the outbound traffic to go about? Do you want the outbound traffic to basically have no restrictions, so it's going back out through the secure gateway, for example? Or do you want to point your outbound traffic back through a secure proxy? And you can configure that over here, or you can do it with an access control list where you're basically configuring which IP address can go out which port, etc., etc. So you can get very granular here with what you're trying to configure and how much you want to lock it down. Typically, you're going to leave this at no outbound traffic unless you're using the secure gateway proxy setting. You would leave this at the first option here and click on next. Now every XenApp server in your farm runs the Secure Ticket Authority, the STA service. However, for Secure Gateway to function properly, it needs access to one or more STA servers that can be used to generate that secure ticket that can be then delivered to the user and establish that secure connection. So what you want to do here is basically give it the name of one of your XenApp servers, one or more XenApp servers. In our case, we're going to do xa01.ncom.local, and it'll automatically append /scripts/ctxsta.dll. This is the default location, and unless there's a need, you shouldn't change this. Now, if you wanted to secure the traffic between the STA and the secure gateway, if you didn't want it to go, for example, over port 80, and you check this box here, you'll notice it automatically changes it to port 443. If you disable the default, it'll allow you to change the port that it's listening on. For the purpose of our demonstration, between the secure gateway and the XenApp server, I'm just going to leave it over port 80. But again, depending on what you're doing and how you want it configured, if you were to secure that traffic, then every one of your XenApp servers is going to need some kind of a certificate in order to establish that connection. Whereas if it's going over port 80, you don't need that SSL, etc. But depending on how you're deploying this, you either keep this checked or unchecked. Click on OK. You should add more than one server for redundancy and load balancing, etc. When you're done, you click on Next. Up here, you can add a connection timeout value if you wanted to, and you can also configure how many concurrent connections can be accessed through the server. Now, this might be a good idea just because it's a Windows server, and you don't want, if you have a lot of users, you might want to limit how many users can connect through it before, otherwise you're going to see session degradation and performance degradation. So by default, it's set to 250. You can set it to unlimited or tweak this. The timeout is also valid because you don't want users to have just an open connection unlimited, especially if it's a secure connection. When you're good, we're going to click on Next. If there are any logging exclusions that you didn't want certain devices to log certain things like load balancers, for example, you can add those here so that it's excluding them from constantly generating unnecessary logs. We're going to just leave this at default. Click on Next. We don't really have anything. This screen here basically is asking what is the location of the web interface server. Now, the location of the web interface server can be on the same box as the secure gateway, or it can be on its own dedicated box. If it's installed on this computer, then you would keep this box checked. If it's not installed on this computer, then you can uncheck this box and point to the web interface server, HTTP, fully qualified domain name, and which port it's listening on. If it's a secure port, then obviously you would check this and it'll automatically change it to 443 for you. Now, for our purposes, we have it installed on the same server as the secure gateway, so we're going to keep this box checked. And this is an indirect connection, which means users will have to connect to the secure gateway first, and the secure gateway will then direct them to the web interface. And whether or not that web interface is installed locally or on a different server is irrelevant at this point. The idea here is the first hop, the first connection that the user makes is the secure gateway, and the secure gateway will then do a redirection to web interface. So the user still sees web interface first, but the initial contact is the secure gateway, which then automatically redirects the user to web interface. Now, if you wanted the user to connect directly to the web interface bypassing the gateway, you can also do that by selecting direct here, and it'll access the web interface first. So that will be the web interface URL that users will access. Typically, you want it to keep it at indirect, and if the web interface is on a different box, then just uncheck the box here and set the proper URL. Once you're done, you're going to click on Next. Select what you want to log, what logging levels you want to configure here. I usually keep it at default, so you can change that if you like. And the final step is to start the access gateway, so that's exactly what we're going to do by clicking on Finish. Let's go ahead and exit out of here, since now we've installed the secure gateway. All right, so now the secure gateway has been properly installed and configured on your server. Now, the last piece that you have to configure is web interface. Web interface has to understand that it is going to send those requests back to a secure gateway, and we have to configure it accordingly. Now, to do that, what I'm going to do is open up the web interface management console, which is under Citrix Management, Web Interface Management Console. And if we right click, you'll notice that in the web interface lesson, we completely skipped over the secure access piece, and I told you guys we'd talk about it later. Well, later is now. So we're going to right click on secure access. Right now it's configured for direct. What direct basically means is that the default, any user connecting to web interface is connecting to that web interface directly. It's not going through any kind of secure gateway, it's not going through any kind of natting, nothing. The user direct to web interface will then enumerate the applications that the user have access to, present those applications, the user can click on them. If you're configuring this web interface to communicate with a secure gateway, or to communicate with any other form of security per se, then you would have to change this particular setting right here. So if you select it and click on Edit, you have many options. Direct is obviously the default. The other one is alternate. Now, what alternate means is that every XenApp server can have an alternate public IP address. So let's say my XenApp server right now is 192.168.1.51. That's its internal IP address. If the user, or if the administrator, the network administrator, gives it a public IP address of, let's say, 208.1.15.63. So it's a 208 IP address. You can come in on each XenApp server on its own and use the command Alt-ADDR, and I'll show you how to use this command in the using command line lesson later. But if you invoke Alt-ADDR, then you're adding an external IP address to the XenApp server. Now, the downside of using this type of method in order to allow users to connect directly to XenApp servers is, first of all, they're connecting. I don't like the idea of users being able to directly connect into XenApp servers. That just doesn't sound right. You're bringing up the GINA, and people are able to click Control-Delete and connect directly into that server. Now, the other disadvantage is that if you had 100 XenApp servers in the environment, you would need 100 public IP addresses, and each server would need its own dedicated public IP address. So it's there if you need it, but I don't recommend you use it. Now, Translate It takes this one step further. Instead of giving each one of them a public IP address, it does a translation. So it's a little more secure, and the translation happens at the firewall level, so it's kind of like natting per se. So the users come in, they don't really see the inside IP address, they see the outside IP address, which then remaps at the firewall level to an internal resources. So the remapping isn't happening at XenApp, as is the case here. It's happening at the firewall, so it's completely transparent to the XenApp server. You just have to tell it that it's translated. Then you have Gateway Direct. Gateway Direct is what we're going to configure, which basically tells web interface that, look, I need you to understand that you're talking to a secure gateway so that you can know how to redirect the traffic when it hits web interface and it's trying to generate that ticket, that token, that launch.ica. It knows that it needs to generate it with gateway in mind. Now, gateway alternate is, again, when you're giving the access gateway an alternate address. These are all, and translated as the same thing, these are all very specific security features that you would have to configure here. If, like, for example, if you select gateway alternate or a gateway translator, you'd have to deal with your network administrator to make sure that that's configured appropriately at the network level. For the most part, you're going to go with Gateway Direct. However, let me show you here real quick. If you select translated and you click on OK, you see that now I have the next option. Here you have the option of basically putting in the internal IP address and the external IP address that is given. So this is information that your network administrator will give to you, and this could be user or gateway device, router, whatever the case might be. So this is how you do that particular translation, so to speak. So click on cancel. For our purposes, what we're going to do is we're going to select Gateway Direct here, click on OK, and click on next. Now here's where you can put in the secure gateway address. So let's say, in my case, it's just XA01 because for the purposes of this demonstration, that's what it is. But let's assume yours was remote.ncom. Well, it would be .com. It wouldn't be .local, because keep in mind, this is accessing it from the outside. This is not accessing it from the inside. So you would need whatever the user are typing in to connect to it. So this would be that IP address. And obviously they're coming in over 443. Now down here you have the option of enabling session reliability, which means the connection, once it's established between the gateway and the DMZ and the XenApp server, it's coming in over 2598, which is the port for session reliability. If you disable this, and you might need to disable it depending on the version of the gateway that you're using, or depending on some circumstances, if you disable this, then the connection happens over 1494 immediately instead of 2598. So when you're ready, you click on next, and again you would have to add the STA servers. Now here's what I would recommend. For the STA servers here, I would add them in the same order that you did on the secure gateway. So when we went through the secure gateway, we added XA01. In my case, I only have one, so it's kind of easy. But in your environment, if you had more than one XA server and you've configured that at secure gateway, make sure you're adding them in the same order here, because it makes it easier from a troubleshooting perspective. So what you're going to do, and let's go ahead and add it here. We're going to do HTTP, and we're going to do // xa01.ncom.local /scripts /ctx sta.dll. Now click on OK. Now there you go. If you add more than one, you can also select use it for load balancing purposes. Now in my case, I only have one, so it wouldn't really matter. So I'm going to click on finish, and voila. Now my web interface is properly configured to understand that it is communicating with a secure gateway. And you'll notice down here in the graph, it's showing you that you're basically going from the secure gateway direct means you're going from user, secure gateway, and right into a non-translating firewall at this point to connect to your XenApp servers. Down here, you'll see if you're using gateway alternate, you're connecting to the gateway, and then it's doing a NAT. The firewall is going to do a NAT using alternate addresses to connect to your XenApp server, and down here it's going to do a translation map to a specific IP address as well. So again, depending on what the security team in your environment is going to dictate, that will help you determine what is the best course of action. But the point I was trying to make here is that you have a lot of options, a lot of leverage over what you can and cannot configure from a security standpoint. All right, let's go ahead and switch back to our presentation and recap what we've learned. All right, so what did we cover in this lesson? We started by talking about the different methods by which we can secure XenApp. We talked about secure ICA, which allows you to encrypt the connection between endpoints and servers on the LAN. We talked about the SSL relay, which is, it's not even a poor man's access to the inside resources from the outside. It's less than that. So that's the absolute last resort, and technically you only need to know this for the CCA exam. You'll never actually deploy it in practice. But it uses some form of certificate to allow external users to connect to internal resources. We talked about the secure gateway and how it's a Windows application that you install on a Windows server and deploy in the DMZ, which is a lot better than Citrix SSL relay. But ideally, you would want to use an access gateway. We talked about the fact that secure gateway is sort of end of life. Citrix isn't developing it anymore. But if you had to, you can deploy it in the DMZ. It'll proxy the connection between the outside and the inside. And I showed you the different methods by which you can deploy the secure gateway. We talked about the single hop DMZ and the double hop DMZ with the use of the secure gateway proxy, which helps or aids the secure gateway in proxying the connections in a double hop demilitarized zone. We also went through and installed secure gateway in this lesson, and then we integrated secure gateway with the web interface. And I told you that the integration of secure gateway with the web interface is going to be the same process as you would secure the access gateway. So that portion of the lesson applies to both the secure gateway and the access gateway when we install it later on in the next lesson. Finally, I hope this lesson was informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.